Today we're talking about new developments with data platforms, in specific, how data is driving innovation not only within clients and customers, but with solution providers as well. And we're lucky enough to have one of those solution providers with us. That's Jeff Freed, Director of Product Management at InterSystems. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Well, I'm glad. We always enjoy having a visitor, and I know you guys are right down the street from us in Cambridge.
Yep.
And InterSystems is an interesting company that we're familiar with, but a lot of people might not necessarily be familiar with because you guys have been fairly quiet, doing some pretty amazing work. Can you talk a little bit about how InterSystems has evolved and what your role is?
Sure. InterSystems, as you said, has been around for quite a while. It's a 40-year-old company that was founded by a guy named Terry Reagan, who's grown it for 40 years, is still the president and CEO and owner, and still writing code. And he's my boss. The company's focused on really mission-critical, data-intensive solutions, and we're well known in healthcare. So we power a lot of the most important hospital systems through companies like Epic, runs all on our data platform. But we work a lot in other industries as well, in financial services, in government, in supply chain, where people have never heard of us.
Well, and the reason why I'm glad you're here is because there's so much happening right now within the enterprise with regard to the opportunities that data, all this data and applications and complexity present. And so can you speak a little bit about the challenge right now for, you know, the senior executives within these large complex organizations as they're trying to do what is being universally called a digital transformation?
Sure, and I think maybe I'll divide it into two pieces. The things that are business challenges as usual and the things that are new. I mean, I'm an old guy. Even though I've only been at InterSystems for a year and a quarter, I've been working with data-intensive systems, with search, data warehousing for 25 years. And a lot of the problems that the C-suite experiences are the same strategic problems. How do you differentiate? How do you move faster than your competition? How can you work smarter? But a lot of them are also new and made possible in the past decade or so through the prevalence of data-driven everything. I personally don't like the term data transformation. It's been so hyped as to be meaningless now. But if you look at the bookstore industry, which for 150 years was all the same, then Amazon is selling books online, it's all digital, and it changed everything. Same thing with Uber, Airbnb. These are all new entrants that completely disrupt an existing industry. And a lot of the C-suite is looking at this and saying, well, is there opportunities to reinvent the business and disrupt somebody else?
Or is somebody going to come along
or is somebody going to come along and destroy me? So
exactly.
It's a threat and an opportunity, so much that it's a mandate. It's hard. A lot of the C-suite, it's hard to figure out how to grab this bull by the horns, especially when the industry is moving so fast and changing so fast.
Well, and it's complex. At a certain level, it's almost overwhelmingly complex because you have all this legacy systems that have been built and all of the internal cultural issues and external cultural issues with partners and customers and any number of other external factors, that it can be overwhelming. And the dirty secret, I think, of a lot of these organizations is that there is no magic bullet. That it's going to take it's going to take some real hard work to get that digital transformation to happen.
Yeah, I think that's transformation is hard.
Right.
It's change management, it's a lot in people, it's a lot in culture, and there's a whole set of infrastructure, legacy partners, et cetera, that you have to sort of push through. But it's happening. So I think the rhetoric around digital transformation has lots of aspects to it, but a lot of it is about, now that you have data, sometimes so much data you don't know what to do with it. You can be smarter, you can have new business models, you can move faster, and how you do that is the challenge.
Well, and so who are you talking to, you know, in generic terms within an organization with regard to that conversation?
So personally, I'm a nerd. I like building things. My job at InterSystems is to build great products. So I talk most typically to those folks that are in the engine room trying to build the engine that's going to power this digital transformation. That includes a lot of software developers, architects, the VP of engineering of a lot of companies, and all the data architects, data scientists, because data is the fuel for that engine.
But they also understand the limitations of the existing systems and the business needs that have to be met.
Sure, absolutely. And frankly, InterSystems, as a 40-year-old company, understands those challenges extremely well. You know, we have grown by taking care of our customers, and we have the blessing of amazing customers, and that's also a burden as we ourselves work to move faster and faster and be in the cutting edge of the data platforms market, because it's moving really fast. So I think I can really empathize with the people that I talk to that are trying to figure out sometimes why they need to change, and always how they can do it. And part of the key is to recognize that it's hard. And another part of it is to look for simplicity wherever you can. So for example, we have a lot of financial services companies that have legacy systems, often multiple duplicative systems from acquisitions, mergers, et cetera. They're running the lifeblood of the firm. So you can't like take a weekend off. You know, that every IT guy that I know knows that they have an hour on Thursday night from midnight to 1 a.m. to get this amount of work done if they ever want to take things offline. So you have to change the airplane while you're flying it. And simplifying that picture, which is usually a mess, is really important.
So what kind of advice do you offer senior executives who are looking at that sort of digital transformation and going in with their eyes wide open and understanding that it's not going to be an overnight transformation. It's going to take time. But how do you counsel them with regard to first steps and kind of those initial stages?
Some of it is, again, motherhood of going in eyes wide open, building the competency in the people you have, because I've seen so many places where you bring in an outside consultant, which is totally right for change management and inspiration, and you don't up-level the people in your own organization who are smart and dedicated and know where all the bodies are buried. But I think it's also thinking about things from a different perspective. Think about the value of the data you have, what you can do with it, and think about the data as an asset. Because sometimes people just view data as a burden, an expense. They have to keep this stuff around for compliance, and they've got a gold mine right under their nose.
Well, and that really is the opportunity for these organizations, is that gold to be mined, and the amount of it that is stacking up down in the mine shaft.
Right. And then there's a lot of levels of the onion to peel beyond that, because InterSystems has really powerful database technology. And part of the principle of simplicity is to have, as much as possible, one data store instead of a bunch of them. So it's pretty common, for example, to have a data warehousing initiative that has offline copies of transactional systems, which means that you have an extra copy of the data. It means any analysis you do is automatically stale, because it's based upon last night's ETL job,
right, ETL, it's
or last weekend's ETL job.
Right.
It might be transformed into a better form, or may not be, because the data model depends upon the application and even the part of the application. But you have a relatively complex solution right there in order just to do transaction and analytic processing. And many of the folks I work with simplify that into a single unified store. I mean, some analyst, Gartner, calls this HTAP, hybrid transaction and analytic processing. I don't think anybody ever actually uses that term other than Gartner. Forrester calls it translytical.
Right, I've heard that term. That's
right,
a beauty.
that rolls off your tongue. But it's really just trying to simplify. And some things are necessarily complex. There's absolutely cases where you want a data mart that's offline. But if you do that out of habit or history, you're missing the boat. And the same thing when it comes to looking at data models, and I increasingly find people that have built up, they've got a relational database that they view for transactional things, and then they have a NoSQL document database for inventory or parts or things that work that way, and then they have a graph database, and it may have Redis level or in-memory cache for real-time customer data. On average, an e-commerce online system uses 5 different databases technologies. That's really complex, and it's not necessary. So there's a concept called multi-model databases, really saying you can look at things as a relational table, you can look at them as an object, which you would do, for example, if you're doing object-oriented programming, writing in Java or C#. That's a natural paradigm. Or you look at things as documents or time value, and it can be all the same data rather than multiple copies of the same thing that you have to keep somehow in sync with each other.
So I'm curious about your director of product management, yeah. and you've been there for about 1.5 years now. You know, how are you looking at the next year or so with regard? I know you just announced a new version of your platform, but how are you thinking about the platform, in general terms, with regard to presenting that to an enterprise that has these complex challenges?
So, 2 parts of that. The first is, I'm all ears. Anybody watching this, I'm really interested in your problems, and I want to learn because the world is changing really fast. So one way I'm approaching it is to speed up. We've changed to quarterly release cycles, to releasing cloud first, to providing things that are ourselves moving very quickly while keeping a really rock stable, predictable annual release. Because we have thousands of mission critical applications run our technology, and I cannot, I have to serve those in a very robust way. So some people call this bimodal IT, another jargon term. For me, it's just speed up the cycle so you can be responsive and pay attention to the fundamentals with every, rock solid production release.
Well, and that's a dichotomy, right, with regard to product management, particularly for a company like InterSystems that has developed very complex implementations, is to try to balance the need for effectively a custom solution every time you're walking through the door with the development of effectively a one-size-fits-all platform.
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is that we provide a built-in toolkit that's pre-integrated, that's super fast, and the people that use it are building the solutions, which is, from a product management perspective, it's a second-order thing. I have to be paying attention to patterns. For example, the use of data in machine learning applications is everywhere. And if you have this gold mine of data and you're overwhelmed by it, then there's a whole class of things which are extremely powerful, but tricky to use. So we're investing really heavily in making the data available to data scientists in a really familiar way, in the tool set of their choice, but keeping the governance for IT so that you can audit things, you only have one copy of the data, you don't take some, my nephew's a data scientist, straight out of school, kind of, I'm not sure I would give him carte blanche access to all the data in my company, much less my car keys.
Smart kid, though.
Very smart. Actually, Jason, if you're watching this, I apologize.
Good major.
Yeah, good major. But
there's going to be lots of demand for data scientists.
You get the sense that there's a tension always between moving fast and moving safe.
Well, and also democratizing and allowing folks like Jason as many keys as they can handle and still be able to provide value.
Absolutely. So, and part of this is building things into the data platform to provide governance, control, data wrangling, because data scientists spend about 80% of their time wrangling the data and about 20% of the time complaining about wrangling the data. So it's grunt work that nobody wants to do, but everybody has to do. And if I can make that faster, that's good. So that's the way I'm thinking about this. It's not about how do I jump onto the next wave of hype. It's what can I build in that makes people's jobs simpler as they build really powerful applications. Because now that, the digital transformation label, part of this is that almost every company realizes it is a software company. I mean, GE is a software company.
Right.
Car companies are software companies.
Yeah, everybody's getting into or data companies, they like to think of themselves as.
And it's both sides of it. Many people are trying to both harness their data and also monetize it in a way that people used to monetize media. And it's really remarkable. But those folks need both the skills and the culture and the technology. So that's the way I'm thinking about it, is how to serve that constituency.
Well, Jeff, that's great. It's a great overview, and I appreciate you coming in and sharing that with us. And we certainly have been keeping an eye on InterSystems, and we would certainly encourage all of you to check out everything that Jeff and InterSystems is working on. It's really an amazing company, and they've been solving some really hard problems and are now pushing to solve even harder problems across a broader swath of clients. So certainly something to stay abreast of. And thanks for coming up the road and swinging in and saying hi.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.